hard not to watch that game and just be super duper impressed with Minnesota and start imagining like what's the ceiling for the 2023-24 Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah, I totally agree. There aren't a lot of players that make me like look at all of my historical stuff and go, well, like something weird about to happen here, like someone having a moment, and like Anthony Edwards makes you think those things. He makes you think like, for basically this entire season, everyone has always joked like, well, we can't compare him to Michael Jordan because it sounds ridiculous. And we know, like, even like people who do podcasts, people who write, people who are on TV, everyone always makes the same inside joke, which is like, well, he looks like, but I can't tell you who he looks like because then everybody will get mad at me. But everybody thinks he's like Jordan. That's what everybody thinks. And now people are more, here's how good he was in the series. Now people just feel like they can get away with saying that, and it's okay. It's like, no, and no one's going to be like, no, moron. Like, no one will ever be Jordan again. Be like, that's not really what we're saying. It's tough not to look at the performances compare. I mean, they're almost performances like without peer too, because you try to figure out like, all right, how does this compare to, like the start of LeBron's career and the start of Jordan's career and the start of, and you can name the next 15 to 20 great players too. And it's like, well, there's like kind of not a lot of comps here for like what's going on. There's like kind of almost none for this kind of a performance in like a closeout or a sweep or anything like this. It's just it's pretty interesting. But like a betting standpoint, like I was trying to reframe the question as like, all right, whatever we're talking about on the show, whatever the story is, like what do you think like the stock price is of the thing that we're talking about? And do you think it's trading at like an all-time high or an all-time low or somewhere in between? And based on what your answer to that is, okay, shouldn't that make you want to either do something or at least like reconsider what you're going to say or what you're going to think? And like, there's no question, like Anthony Edwards is, like freaking Nvidia right now. I mean, it's just like, he's just trading at like a $7,000 a share or whatever. He just, everyone talking about the series, the topic du jour today is, oh, well, they can actually beat the Nuggets. They can win the title. Edwards is Jordan, like all of these things. This is what everyone's talking about today. Okay. So like, if they're trading at this, then like, is this a good time to buy Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves if you just view it as like an investment? And as awesome as they are, like this is where I try to ground myself in the historical. This is where I snap back to reality and the historical stuff, and I just go like, the Minnesota Timberwolves make no sense in about 50 ways as an NBA title winner. So as awesome as Anthony Edwards is, like it's too soon to think of them like that. Now everything else can be in play. Finalist, conference finals, whatever. I think a winner is really, really tough. But I see people today like, I get it. Like, I get watching those games and being like, why can't they do the same thing to Denver if Murray's hurt, especially? Why can't they beat the Celtics in the finals? Why can't they beat whoever they're going to play in the? Why can't they beat Shea in Oklahoma City, who maybe we have a similar conversation about? So I get all the love. He's awesome. The press conference is awesome. Everything's awesome. But he's trading at a really high price. Like, I don't want to buy when I think he's trading at a completely unsustainably high price. So it just to tie a bow on the like stock trading and all that stuff. I like thinking about the stuff that way. I'm not like an in the markets day trader. This is just, none of this is my area of expertise. But I understand pricing at least enough, I think, to make these comparisons. My theory going into this postseason, which we did on the show a bunch of times, I go, look, I'm really heavy Denver. They're the only team that I wanted to bet to win the title all year. They were the only team I wanted to bet on at any of the prices that were offered. They were the only ones I wanted. And I go, at the start of the playoffs, I go, but look, like, it's okay to have a Denver contingency plan. Like, what happens? And I think I even said, what happens if someone gets hurt, actually, was what I said. Now Murray's got a calf strain. And we know that if you pull at the thread of one of the 5 members of the Nuggets starting lineup, the whole thing falls apart. We saw it all year. And it'll happen again in the playoffs. Like, this is not, I would never show up to bet Denver again if Murray was not going to play. And the Denver contingency plan at the start of the playoffs for me, which we did on the show, was if it's not Denver, I think the Celtics win the finals, and they do it by beating a team that's not ready. And if you look at the landscape of the Western Conference right now, it's really easy, actually, for me to visualize 2 possible finals that the Celtics would win. And it's them beating Oklahoma City, who's definitely not ready, but is awesome and might be ready really soon. And it's them beating Anthony Edwards in his first trip to the finals before he comes back and wins like 5 titles. Like, it's like, that's kind of what this looks like to me. This looks like really early with these 2 teams. So look, and you say like, well, what about Denver? I go, Denver over everybody is priority one, whoever comes out of the Eastern Conference. That's the most likely way that I would see it coming together. And I think if they played Boston, I do think they would win a lot of the time. That's just my opinion. So I think like if you're almost playing it out like, well, if the Celtics win, like how do they win? I think they win by playing a team like Minnesota, who's like really good, but has never like sniffed a situation like that before. Coach, best player, second best player, third best player. Nobody's been near a game like that before, and the Celtics have. They made the finals a couple years ago. So it would be that, and then Oklahoma City's obviously easy one, the youngest roster in the league. That would be really similar to the Durant, Westbrook, Harden team that made the finals and lost to LeBron when they were like early, but people thought they would be ready at some point too.
Let's play a game. Betting market. I'm creating this in the moment.
All
Anthony
right.
Edwards, as of right now, age 22. And I'll have the juice set a certain way.
Yeah.
Over under half an NBA championship in his career. So like, will he win a title or not? I will have yes minus 200, no plus 150. What do you do?
But that pricing, I would bet the under, just because it's really hard to win an NBA title. Just really hard to do.
What do you think most people would say today? Most people would probably would
like
lay
how about
yes,
two and a
right?
half? Right. Yeah. It's like how many did Kobe win again? Right. It's like I mean that's what people would be asking. So just like it's just tough to win a title. And look at
Take price out of the equation then. Do you if you had to guess, do you think Edwards is going to win it? Like more likely yes or no that Edwards wins a title. Pencil,
so,
not pen.
let's have like a real. I love this stuff because I like all I do with NBA is look at historical stuff, and I think it's really interesting. So like let's be really honest here. He's like his title prime is going to be in like the craziest thing. He's so far from it. Like Jokic,
He's
Giannis,
22.
all these guys. Like the Anthony Edwards can be Michael Jordan and still not win for like 5 more seasons, and he can be Michael Jordan. And he doesn't have to win for like 5. And imagine if he doesn't win like this year, next year, the next year, how like the talk around him will be. This is like Jokic, where Jokic didn't win, and it'd be like, actually, Jokic is on like a top 5 player all time trajectory now, and it took forever to get to that point. Everyone's always impatient.
Imagine
with star
social
players.
media surrounds in the 80s, right? Like Jordan's drafted in 84, doesn't win a championship until 91. Like he would have been like, raked over the coals for some of those losses.
Which he was to a certain extent. Like I mean, there was, but it's different to be like, well, like I picked up the Chicago Tribune and there was a nasty column, you know, or something, as opposed to hey, like 24/7. This is like kids in school now. It's like social media. Like you can't get away from it anymore. Whereas you could get away no matter where you were, you could get away from it. If the Timberwolves beat the Nuggets and we kind of play it out, the Timberwolves would obviously move on to the Western Conference Finals. And your answer to this could just be the Timberwolves. But if the Timberwolves beat Denver, who wins the Western Conference in that setup? Is it a team on the other side? Is it OKC with an interesting draw here, like a fake first-round series and then hurt Luka or no Kawhi? Is it just Minnesota again? What does the Denver series take out of them? Like, who wins the West if Minnesota wins and you're kind of right about your handicap?
Yeah, my guess is the Thunder coming through. I'm not impressed at all with what I'm seeing out of Clippers or Mavericks right now. Like all of the kind of upside that you saw with both of those teams heading into the playoffs is kind of bubbles popped. And I think Thunder in great shape to get through a clean series with a little bit of tiny fatigue. And honestly, like if there's anything you want to take away from what you're seeing in Thunder, like my goodness gracious, their defense is ferocious. Like the wings in particular, just making absolute life living hell for the guards is awesome to watch. And the Thunder are going to be able to do that, I would guess, in the second round as well. So it's going to probably be Thunder with home court against the Timberwolves in that scenario. And I would be fine with the Thunder in that case. And I don't have a strong lean. I think the market's probably going to be close to, I don't know, my minus 120, minus 150 at the most. But, my fare is probably right around OKC minus 140. And I think that has the potential to be an awesome, epic 7-game-ish kind of Western Conference Finals if that's the matchup. And if the Nuggets come through and beat the Timberwolves, I'd say that the market's going to give you a pretty awesome opportunity to bet the Thunder in that case. And I have some Thunder to win the West 5-1 in pocket. And I think ultimately that would be my pick at the moment, but it's just a little bit of a soft lean as opposed to high confidence.
Like we did a big segment on our show before the start of the playoffs, and I basically read this research packet from the NHL, and it said regular season series ends up being like really predictive of who wins in the playoffs. It's
Yeah.
like oddly
Yes.
predictive. Like you would think regular season and postseries are different. In hockey, seems like not so much. It looks like both Edmonton and Vancouver will advance to the next round to play each other. And I know Thatcher Demko was, a big part of the regular season for Vancouver. Maybe he won't play in this series. They played 4 times in the regular season. Vancouver won all 4 games. How would you handicap a meeting between those two teams now, knowing it'll be, DeSmith or Shelovs or whatever? It'll be somebody that's not Thatcher Demko in net. What about Edmonton and Vancouver in the next round, real quick?
Well, Ken, I think that if you're playing any prop totals, it's got to be the Vancouver Canucks under shots, right? I think they might get 10 goals and 10 shots the next game and probably try to get 50% shooting percentage. I think that's a dead even series, to be honest with you. Right? It depends who the better goaltender is going to be, and I assume that Denko would be back. Although when you hear injury, and this is in any sport, right, Ken? Week to week is never 1 week. So could they, if they wrap up quick, would that hurt them getting Demko back? No, they're getting a lot of experience playing a tough Nashville team. I think it's a toss-up. And you're right. I just love the way Vancouver plays. I don't think they can contain a guy like Quinn Hughes, which, and then as great as Drew Doughty has played this season, he's not Quinn Hughes. And they don't have Brock Besser, and they have all kinds of offensive weapons. So the great defense that Edmonton's played in a couple of games here, it's going to be way more severely tested. So toss-up, I would lean towards Edmonton because they get Game 7 at home, but that could easily be a 6 or 7 game series. But I'd give a slight edge to Vancouver in that series.